This video is brought to you by LEGO The Hobbit, video game available now.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Roth and Joshua here in our first video together. We're very excited. We hope you are too. We're going to talk a little Captain America 3. So if you haven't seen Cap 2, go see it. You're crazy. It's so good. And then come back and join us. We're also going to be talking a little bit about spoilers from the comics. So if you're not up to date, if you don't know some of the larger comic storylines, you may want to clear out and then go read them and then come back and join us. But first up, let's just talk about this. So we know Captain America 3 is happening. We know when it's happening. Of course, it's a big showdown with Batman versus Superman. Mm-hmm. So the big question for many comic fans and non-fans is Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier, going to take over for Captain America like he does in the comics? And it looks like he is, and here's some of the reasons why. Chris Evans, as we know, he was signed up for 6 movies, so that's basically the 3 Captain America and 3 Avengers movies. He did a little bit part in Thor 2, but
that was like a favor.
Yeah.
Doesn't count.
Although initially he was saying anything I do is going to count, so we wondered, but apparently it was just a favor, so that's good. Sebastian Stan was signed on for 9 movies, so he's done 2, he has 7 more to go. He can totally take over this character contractually. So I think it's going to happen. You know, the Russo brothers who directed Cap 2 have been doing I'm doing all the talking here, man.
No, please, you're doing great.
The Russo brothers who directed the film have done some interviews recently, and they said, you know, hey, Bucky's story, the Winter Soldier story isn't over, so extrapolate whatever that you think that means. It's going to go forward. Well, we know where it's going. End of my long, endless story is I think that the Winter Soldier is going to take over for Captain America. So the question is how?
I'm glad you asked.
Good, you can talk.
Yes. And this is a big spoiler from the comic book. So if you don't want to know this, you might want to, pause or get out or whatever. But the big notable story by Marvel that they've done in the past 10 years is probably Civil War, where 2 factions of superheroes, one led by Captain America, one led by Iron Man, faced off in opposing ideologies about how superheroes should operate, whether they should register with the government or whether they should just do their own thing. Now, that sounds like a big Avengers story.
It does.
I feel like because, that DC movie, Batman, Superman movie is going to be on the same date as them, they need to up their game. And so I think that they could do that story for Cap 3. It is heart and soul. It is a Captain America story. And how this works for what you were saying to bring the Winter Soldier and have him take over for Cap is because Captain America dies at the end of this story. Not in the actual Civil War proper story, but in the issue of Captain America that came right after it, he dies. And for over a year, the Winter Soldier became the new Captain America with a shield and a gun and a black suit, sort of has a darker personality, So I really feel like that's the way to go. But for how they would change that epic story that involves the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, characters who aren't in the Marvel Cinematics,
they don't have the license to use those characters.
They don't have those, but they could change the story. They could make it a villain who's sort of taken over in the government and wants to register superheroes and take over Iron Man's role. And because there's going to be a ton of more superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the time this comes out, between Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and is Ant-Man? Or that's after Avengers. Yeah, it's after Avengers 2. So there we go.
But
there's going to be a lot of there could be a lot of heroes to take sides and have just sort of smaller supporting roles and still make it a Cap movie.
I agree. I mean, I think it's totally possible. The comic is Iron Man, which, Downey's role in the future of this universe is highly questionable. They've said that sort of Downey and that Iron Man and Cap are going to kind of co-lead in the Avengers 2, which is interesting because it's you're kind of bringing Chris Evans up more, but then maybe to be removed later. I don't know. I think that the reason that I think it's a great idea. I think it's cool, and I think that they could do it and should do it. And the reason is it's totally in line with what they've sort of established thematically in Captain America 2, which is what is freedom? What is the cost of freedom? Cap has already established himself in this film as a guy that's this isn't freedom. We're fighting for people's rights and people's freedoms. Civil War is about you're infringing on our civil liberties. I'm not standing for that. That's what his stance is. They've already established that is a decision he would make. It's awesome, and it's kind of a cool, if you want to just go to watch superheroes fighting each other, you can do that, you know? But if you want to go and like get kind of a pseudo-political message or sort of just engage politically a little bit, that's there for you too. And I think that was true in the comic as well a little bit, you know?
So what do you think if they do bring the Winter Soldier, can this like sort of evil person be Captain America? Like, do you think that, because it's two different like visions of America?
Yes. I was saying this earlier, that one of the things that I think is kind of cool about having the Winter Soldier take over as Cap is that, you know, they brought in this character that I initially thought was going to be difficult to bring to the screen in this day and age, but it's worked beautifully, which is this guy he is America's vision of itself. The best version of America that we can have is kind of what he represents. You know, he's done horrible things, but he's a Boy Scout. He's very highly moral and ethical. He's sort of thinking of the greater good constantly. He's apple pie and things like that. But then you bring in the Winter Soldier, who is this angst-ridden, you know, internally torn apart. He's done terrible things. He doesn't know how to reconcile the bad things he's done with the good person that he wants to be. That is an interesting other side of that coin, you know. Look, again, it's just kind of fun to watch these superheroes sort of play out against each other, but it's also interesting to think about, like, well, that's a different version of America in a way. Not in a bad way, but just in an interesting way. Yeah. You know.
I'm down. I'd be excited to see this happen. Captain America 3, Civil War.
Yeah, and it also sort of plays into the whole idea of like Hydra, and maybe there is still I don't know how all of this is going to play out in terms of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the other movies, but there is maybe a secret element that's at play that maybe wants to have the superhero registration. Maybe they're the ones that are advocating for it. So like you said, it's a villain.
Yeah, that can happen, yeah.
Or maybe at a certain point, only so much destruction can happen before the people of the United States are like, okay, this is kind of crazy. New York blew up, and who knows what's going to happen in the Avengers too. Yeah, then they start
turning on the heroes who saved them. Like, they start blaming them for all this to happen.
For all the destruction.
And just one thing I want to throw in before we end is that in Captain America 2, we saw Armin Zola on the computer screen. And for those who don't know, in the comic books, he was sort of a giant robot with a computer screen on his chest, and his face appeared there. So in the Captain America 3, I hope we get to see Zola's robot body.
You want to see that?
Yes.
You don't think he's dead?
No, I think he's going to come back as a virus, and he's going to take over like something. It's going to be great.
Okay. Could that tie into Ultron? That's another discussion. We'll talk more about that later. We're going to talk about it now over martinis. You guys let us know what you think. What do you want to see in Captain America 3? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Do you think that we're off our rockers? Let us know in comments as nicely as you can. That would be great. And we will talk to you soon about more Cap.